Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. I'm delighted today to be joined by Amit Sevak, who is the CEO of ETS, Educational Testing Services, a big organization I've been following my entire professional life. We'll get into all that in a bit, the future of assessment, what they're doing with AI, what they're thinking about global trends. But before we do any of that, I just want to welcome Amit to the show. Welcome to Trending in Ed.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be on the show, and congratulations on the show for so many years. I really am applauding the evangelizing and the communicating of some of these key themes in education. So thank you for your service to this sector.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of stuff to talk about is the way I think about it. And then especially if you look at, the last 5 years, the amount of change that we've all been leaning into or running away from, whatever we're doing. And I know you've been at ETS really the last 3 years through a lot of that, which we'll get into in a bit. But we always like to start with your origin story, how you got to this point in your professional life. Can you catch us up on how you got to this point?
I am the product of the American immigrant story. My parents came to the US to pursue education and work, and I was born and raised in Chicago with that education orientation to study hard, get good grades, get a good job, go to a good college, all that good stuff. So I would say that that was an important part of my origin story, that kind of perspective on really living the American dream through education and hard work. After college, thought I was going to be a professor, Mike. I went to the University of Chicago. It's a place with a lot of focus on research and teaching. And I loved my teachers. I mean, I was just so inspired by so many of them. I was a sociology and econ major undergrad. I did an international relations master's, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a dynamic teacher and engage students and all of that. So when I first graduated, I started on that journey, did some research, did some teaching, went to China. And it was when I was in China that I actually realized, as much as I love teaching, and I do love the education space, teaching, research, I really was inspired to see what can I do outside of the classroom. And so when I came back from China to the States, after a brief stint in consulting and business school, I really found that my passion lied at the intersection of education and leadership of organizations. So how do you administer or manage mission-driven education organizations? So my career has been focused on entrepreneurial opportunities to start up new businesses, or has been focused on transforming or turning around organizations in education. So I've been in education for decades now, and they've been primarily focused on those two areas: starting up new things in our sector or taking existing organizations and transforming them.
Yeah. And then what brought you to ETS?
Looking back over my time in the sector, realized, Mike, that the one thing that we really need to transform in our sector is how we measure outcomes. You know, in the United States, we invest almost $1 trillion every year between public money and private money in the sector, K-12, higher ed, workforce development. If you add all of that together, federal, state dollars, all of it, it's $1 trillion every year. And yet, with all that money, we don't actually know what we're getting for it. There's no clear dashboards. There's no clear outcome measures that are consistent, that are reliable, that are robust, that are easily available. And so what hit me was the need for better measurement could really unlock our understanding of what works and what doesn't work, can help be a guide to states, to cities, to schools, certainly to organizations that are providing services like vendors and so forth. And so I just started thinking a lot about this question of how do we get good, reliable data in our sector to help better drive outcomes in education. And where does data come from at the heart of it in our sector? It actually comes when someone takes a test or is measured in some way for the learning that they're getting. And so it kind of made me realize, oh, wow, ETS is at the intersection of one of the biggest opportunities to unlock a tremendous social value by providing different kinds of assessments to produce different kinds of data. ETS does like 50 million tests every year,
Wow.
either ourselves or through our partners.
Hmm.
And if you think about an average test as having, let's say, 100 questions, just to keep the math simple,
Yeah.
that means that we're producing 5 billion data points.
Mm.
50 million times 100, 5 billion data points. And in this world of AI, where data becomes a new oil, it's an amazing opportunity for ETS to really have a huge social impact by reimagining the products and services we have, but doing it in a new, more technology-enabled way. And so that's what got me excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for folks who may not be familiar with the full scope of what you're talking about, this is really spanning, as you said, K-12, higher ed, a lot of really post-secondary, really postgraduate, like graduate admissions, professional schools, credentialing, and then also your global. Can you outline that in a way so that
Sure.
folks can understand what you're talking about?
Yeah, you summarized it really well, Mike. We have a variety of products and services for the K-12 space. We have, for example, Praxis.
Mm.
Now, Praxis is this incredible jewel. Praxis is effectively the nation's licensure
Mhm.
framework and offering. 43 of the 50 states require Praxis to be
Mhm.
licensed to teach.
Yeah.
So just like a driver's license or an airplane license, if you aspire to be a teacher in the US, in most places you're taking Praxis at some point in
And
your career.
this is where I love to make the Allen Iverson joke. Praxis? You talking to me about Praxis?
So we have about 300,000 people that take Praxis every
Wow.
year.
Yeah.
And so that is an offering that we are now building products and services around to
Yes.
help really not just be a test, but really be a way to help support pre-licensure and post-licensure teachers,
Hmm.
pre-service and post-service teachers to get the opportunity to really be a teacher, to fulfill their dream and to help serve
Sure.
the school districts and the schools. So that's one example. The other is we provide assessments for states. And so we do a lot of work. California is a great example where we're very fortunate to have been for years now the provider of the summative assessments. So we, for elementary, middle, and high school, are able to provide updates on math, literacy, and science across the state. And then we just recently came out with, in fact, the report on the results there for California. We
Hmm.
also, in the K-12 space, are doing a lot of innovative things, Mike. We're very focused right now on something we call skills for the future, which is how do you develop work-ready skills for high school students? We've got a pilot going in 5 states. We're about to announce a 6th state, and we're really excited by the potential to really help reimagine how forward-looking high schools can really start to measure skill progression. It's a competency-based learning approach that the
Mm.
student ends up with a skills transcript to complement their academic transcript and helps
Mm.
teachers and administrators better track work-ready skills while the
Yeah.
students are going through high school. So we're very focused on helping high school students be successful for the future of work. The
Mm.
other one we do is an exciting offering for the college market through an offering we call Compass. We're helping higher ed institutions start to do something similar of measure work readiness throughout the undergrad journey.
Yeah.
And so we have a whole range of career interest inventories,
Yeah.
soft skill measures, which we call EDGE, and a whole
Mm.
range of other tools to help career services
Yeah.
in universities really better measure and track work readiness at the skill level for
And that
colleges.
and that's a topic that comes up a lot around Gen Z's readiness and is higher ed actually equipping our graduates with the skills that they actually need to translate into the workforce. So I'm sure those offerings are getting a lot of interest. The skills landscape focusing not just on the so-called harder skills, but also more durable skills have become increasingly interesting, especially when we talk about AI.
Exactly. And for those of us like you and me, Mike, that have been inside of education and innovation for a long time, you know, the inside baseball discussions on these are really fun to have because we all get inspired by talking about this. But the latest stats
Mm.
right now that show that college graduates are not getting jobs in their field of study, they're not getting the level of income that they deserve,
Yeah.
really means that this is a moment that has huge urgency for us. And
Hmm.
I've been thinking about and working on competency-based learning for higher ed now for 10 years. But I feel like this is a time when the product meets the moment. And that's why we believe that Compass could really help supercharge all of these struggling colleges in the US that are looking to better articulate their value proposition. The latest stats, if I recall, the latest numbers show about a 7% unemployment rate for fresh college graduates, significantly ahead of the national average. It's the worst in almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
40% underemployment. The Wall Street Journal just reported 40% underemployment of college graduates right now. That means
Yeah.
that 2 out of every 5 college grads didn't need a college degree to do the job that they're first doing after college. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a national situation here that really requires us to, come up with tools. So the kind of things that you and I are excited about of thinking about how do you really develop these kind of workplace skills in college.
Mm.
We've been talking about it for years, but now I feel the moment is now in
Yeah.
2026, 2027, 2028, where, colleges that survive and ones that don't, by and large, are going to be the ones that really figure out and crack open. And that's why we're delighted to partner with Brandeis as our liberal arts partner for piloting this. We
Yeah.
believe Brandeis, under the leadership of Art Levine, has a huge potential to really reimagine how a liberal arts college can do this. But we also see large state systems like the California State University system, which is another partner of ours,
Yeah.
400,000 students, average tuition $10,000. I mean, there's a lot of good that we can do for these students by equipping them. So these are all just some examples of what we're doing in just the K-12 space and a little bit of the
Yeah.
higher ed space. So that's one division of ETS, which we call education.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about that. The other area around ETS that we're really proud of is research. We have a phenomenal team in research, and our research team is really focused on breakthroughs. So we're really focused on producing groundbreaking research to help Mike better measure how we do testing. So it's really pushing the envelope. It's really thinking of new methodologies. How do you do testless assessments?
Right.
Right? Where you don't have to physically take a test, but like you and I are talking, and if there was an AI testing agent behind the scenes measuring how well is Amit speaking or making eye contact and then giving me a score report, that's a testless assessment.
Yeah.
So how do we do more innovative kinds of tests like that, more personalized assessments, AI coaches to help give feedback after a test is done? So these kinds of things are really at the forefront of what we're focusing on. A new AI literacy framework's coming out, a lot of work on policy recommendations, a ton of work on really complex skills and how do you measure complex skills. So these are the examples of the kind of research themes we're working out in our new agenda on research. Then we have a whole area that is entirely focused on workforce.
I was excited about that. We talked future of work, and when I knew you were coming on, I was intrigued because I don't think I've had anyone with your vantage point to be able to kind of give us some perspective on what you're seeing as far as that goes.
It's been trending for a few years now, but this accelerated focus on workplace skill certifications, being licensed, being certified for certain skills. The United States labor force has, let's call it, just over 150 million people in the labor force. Roughly about 20% have either a license or a certificate that's required to do their job.
Yep.
Like a truck driver needs to be licensed to be a truck driver, an airline pilot, or certifications like in technology, you need to be certified for certain languages and certain software tools. So let's say roughly about 20%. In the US, that probably ought to be somewhere close to 50% as we move forward, because a high school diploma or a college degree doesn't provide enough clarity on is that person's abilities relevant for the job.
Right.
And so that's where licensing and certifications come in. And again, a lot of thought leaders, a lot of people have been thinking about this. I've certainly been talking a lot about this for years. But again, the moment is now, because with the challenges that higher ed is facing in high school, and we're trying to serve high school and higher ed, but we're seeing that there's so much demand right now by everyday workers that are saying, look, if I can get prepared and get this extra certificate or get this extra license, I can be more competitive in the marketplace. So we decided to go big in this place on measurable, high quality certifications and licenses. So we acquired a company called PSI. PSI is now the backbone of what we're calling our ETS solutions offering. And it's basically a series of offerings that's providing certificates and different licensing products for states, for associations, for companies. We're just proud to have announced that Google is partnering with us for certifying around Google Cloud. We have a ton of industries across the board. The FAA, every American pilot has to take an assessment that is powered through our work.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of healthcare and finance, like insurance, and a whole range of technical vocational roles where we're now powering really high quality tests that give people comfort, that give employers comfort and associations comfort. So broadly speaking, those are our three buckets. There's education, there's research, and then there's workforce. And then we do have, as you mentioned, a big global operation.
Yeah.
We have employees in over 30 countries.
Mm.
We do testing in over 10,000 test centers across 200 countries nearly.
Mm.
And we do remote proctoring, which is online testing all
Yeah.
over the world. And so, yeah, and we've opened up offices in India, in Saudi, and in other markets. In China,
Yeah.
we've expanded because of that belief that we have that we're really here to serve the world.
Yeah. That's impressive. That was quite a bit that you outlined there off the top of your head. So good on you. And then, the actual trends within the workplace are certainly being impacted by artificial intelligence. And you were also talking about how your work and the work of assessment itself is being transformed and disrupted in interesting ways with the advent of AI. What's your perspective on that? How are you keeping up with it? And then how are you thinking about how ETS can both, tap into these broader trends in the workforce, but then also leverage these tools in your work?
It's a great question. The AI question. The demand is skyrocketing for AI related skills in the workplace. So let's
Mhm.
start with first employers and what they need. And those skill requests are just reflected in so many places, but the most important are really the job postings.
Right.
So if you look at LinkedIn, 300% increase in requests for AI skills job descriptions. Handshake, the
Mm.
platform that higher
Yes.
ed organizations use to post college graduate jobs for employers to look at, 400% increase in just the last year. So you're seeing all of this increasing demand
Yeah.
for AI skills. So back to this discussion of how do you measure that? How do you certify that? How do you
Yeah.
ensure? So right now, we're in this interesting dance where the employers are saying, I need this. And the students or the prospective employees are saying, I've got this. But there's not really a way to effectively manage this signaling gap that we've got right now. And so
Right.
that's where our very strong belief is that what we need is number one, a common framework of what does AI literacy mean.
Yeah.
And that includes, a basic set of foundational skills. What do you know about what AI is, or machine learning, or deep learning?
Hmm.
So just like the concepts. Do you have the foundational understanding of the concepts? What is AI?
Hmm.
Then the second is, how do you do AI? Meaning, how do you apply? How do you write prompts and so forth? So
Yeah.
interacting with existing AI tools. And then the third is really, how do you really build? How do you build agents? How do you really advance? And so if you think about just broadly speaking, and there's much more detail and many, many different permutations, but just at a high level, most literacy frameworks tend to have roughly that scaffolding.
Yeah.
I would say that the main thing where we feel passionately about is the need for high quality measurement tools
Hmm.
to be able to measure, what does someone really know?
Hmm.
What can someone really do? And what can someone really build?
Yeah.
And so that is what we're really focusing on right now. And we believe that that is going to unlock a lot of opportunity to remove friction
Hmm.
between employers and employees and just create, and by the way, this is, Mike, for me, not just a economic argument of why we need a more common literacy framework and why we need better measurement tools to measure AI literacy and fluency. It's actually also strategic for the country.
Right.
The United States right now is in a global war for AI talent.
Yeah.
And right now, you've got countries like China that are standardizing AI
Hmm.
literacy in public schools.
Yeah, I'm a
You've got,
parent of a 6-year-old, and I recently saw they're bringing their AI
yeah,
curriculum that young, which was kind of, I don't know how to feel about it, but it definitely struck me as an interesting contrast because he's certainly not being taught that in school.
well, I would feel good about my 6-year-old having it. I'm glad you raised that because I am increasingly forming a view that AI literacy needs to be thought of like English literacy, or more
Mm.
broadly, language literacy. And as we all know, there is a moment when a language can be introduced to a child and it becomes part of their first
Yes.
language, part of their brain. And so
Hmm.
if I grow up in an English speaking household and I want to introduce Spanish or
Right.
another language, I want to get to that child, say before they're 10 or 13,
Yeah. Take advantage
right?
of that neuroplasticity. Absolutely.
Exactly, exactly. And so I love the fact that you shared that example, because I think that the more we can introduce, pre-elementary and elementary students to the fundamentals,
Yeah.
the more it becomes hardwired as a first language, second language, English, Spanish, AI, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, for those that are later, you can still have pretty good fluency if you're picking it up in high school and college.
Mm.
And then obviously we don't want to give up hope on those of us that are past those years. We know there's still a lot we can learn and a lot we need to learn, but it will take more effort, right?
Right.
Because the
Right.
neuroplasticity may not quite be there. So we'll need to do it. But that's our belief in a nutshell, that
Yeah.
we are big believers in the potential. There are tons of risks with AI, but there's, a lot of potential, right, in curing diseases and
Yeah.
driving efficiency and improving learning and incredible outcomes for the world. That's
Hmm.
why, so many trillions of dollars are being invested in it.
Yeah.
But at the heart of it, until we can measure
Mm.
human skills around
Hmm.
AI,
Hmm.
we're just all running around in circles.
Yeah. And then the former Kaplan employee in me is immediately drawn to then the nature of the assessments themselves, where when you're trying to assess AI, maybe that foundational level of knowledge could be assessed through more traditional techniques. But when you start thinking about how is it applied, how am I building agents, how am I doing some of these more advanced moves, you were also talking about, stealth assessments and being able to, assess someone's capability almost passively rather than a more formal structured testing session. A summative assessment, instead, can you get something a little more formative that is sort of observing someone's behavior and then assessing how they're doing? I imagine those types of things have to come into play when you think about the future of assessing AI literacy.
Yeah, no, that's right. There's a diversity of tools. And by the way, I'm impressed by the question that you asked. So, when you're looking for opportunities outside of this gig and want to hang out with our ETS team, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have
Yeah.
you over.
Princeton's not
But
far, sure.
yeah, that's a great question. And one of the ways I think about this is, in the world of assessments that we're living in right now, in my head, because I'm a former consultant, I look at it as almost a 2 by 2,
Mm.
where you've got, on one axis, what are we measuring?
Mm.
And on the second axis, how are we measuring it?
Hmm.
And the what I'd like to propose is that on the one axis, there's traditional things that we're measuring, math and reading. In most
Yep.
of the world, we want to, at the school level, at the country level, get basics of that. And we all know that math and reading are building blocks for life,
Yeah.
to produce engaged citizens, workers. You need literacy and you need math in the current world we live in. Okay, great. We're good on traditional skills. But then what about all those emerging skills?
Hmm.
And what about those skills that we kind of know, but we're not really ever getting a score report on or really knowing how to evaluate? But
Yeah.
we all know communication is important. We do performance reviews and we give feedback to people on how
Right.
they show up in communication. Or collaboration is super important, and we work in teams, right? In most organizations, and how do you measure that?
Hmm.
Or we just talked about AI literacy, right? That's a
Yeah.
what. So if you think about it, there's a continuum of what I'll call the traditional what that you
Mm.
measure,
Hmm.
math and reading. And then you've got these durable skills. And then you've got AI skills. And then you have, of course, the actual skills to do a job. Like if you're a software programmer that needs Python, you need to know Python.
Right.
There's skills that are specific. If you're a nurse, you need certain healthcare practices. A plumber needs to know how to manage pipes. So there's a continuum of skills. That's the what.
Mm.
And then there's the how we measure. And this is where, to your question, on the how we measure, traditionally, we are used to multiple choice tests or basic, easy ways to score tests, if I could use that term. And we're all familiar with those standardized tests, summative
Yep.
tests. The teacher that use the publisher's list of questions at the back of the book. Okay, great. We're all good with multiple choice. We get that. And we understand that that's a way to test someone's ability to pick the right answer for various choices. But there's so many other types of ways to measure. And to your point, one of the areas that I'm really excited about is something that sits in between the traditional measures of multiple choice and the really innovative aspects like AI enabled activity
Hmm.
is performance assessments. And so a performance assessment is where you're measuring someone's ability to do something.
Mm.
They're typically a simulation. The use case that most comes to mind for us is a doctor that is practicing to be a surgeon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that doctor's excited. They're ready to go. They want to go, do good things in the world and help people. Great. Well, most of us would want that doctor to get a lot of hours of practice, and
Yeah.
we would all prefer that to not be on me. And so if that doctor can go do lots of simulation, in a gamified environment,
Right.
playing video games, if you will,
Totally. Yeah.
to get experience, to get feedback, to get coaching, to go do analysis, to read the
Mhm.
score reports, then they get better at that surgery. And then over time, they become ready for prime time, ready to do that surgery on Mike first. And then after you're okay, then they could do it on me. But anyway, kidding aside, I think that that's performance based, or airline
Mm.
pilots is another
Yeah.
one where you
Right.
want them to do simulation. So where I'm going is, I think we're in this world right now where the world is opening up to better ways to measure that
Mhm.
go beyond multiple choice. And the AI enabled activity is super exciting as well, where,
Yeah.
somebody can ask me verbally questions and then I can respond verbally. Well, the good news is that organizations like ETS that have been serving people with different abilities, people that have special needs that can't maybe hear or can't see, that we now have so many of these speech related capabilities. And we've been actually doing this way before ChatGPT, but now
Right.
the moment has come where people are realizing we need to measure more things
Mm.
to get more data to help people. And then we need to find new ways to measure things. And so
Right.
I look at it as this 2x2, because where ETS is going is we're moving to push the boundary
Mm.
away from that traditional, let's do multiple choice to measure math and reading, to let's now measure more skills for the future, compass, workforce skills. Let's do durable skills. Let's do AI skills. Let's do work
Yeah.
ready skills. And we need to use much more measures that are outside of traditional, like performance tasks or like AI enabled assessments that are
Yeah.
mainly, and that world is in that top right box, if you will, in a box. That's
Yeah.
where we want to go. I'd love to see all 50 million of our tests. We'll get to 100 million one day. I want to push not only more testing, but
Mm.
also push more measures and more innovative ways to do those measures.
Mm. Love it. I was visualizing the 2x2 and the scatter plot as you were talking. And then you also have a really interesting vantage point, from a global perspective. Many of the folks I interview on the podcast are perhaps overly US focused. What are you noticing as someone who has that broader, 200 countries? There's only so many countries. I don't think there's too many you don't have, but what are you seeing? What are you noticing? And, how might that inform policy or strategy really? You were talking earlier about the competitive landscape for the US. What are you learning? What do you see from that vantage point?
You're catching me at a good time in asking that question, because I'm thinking a lot about the global context these days
Hmm.
and where is ETS going to serve these markets. Over the last 3 years I've been at ETS, I've had the fortune to visit over a dozen countries and meet with the country leaders, like the ministers of education and others,
Yeah.
and meet with various other educational leaders and workforce leaders and ed tech companies and get a feel of what's going on. And I'm just coming off the heels actually last week of UNGA, of the United Nations General Assembly in New
Right.
York,
Yep.
and had a chance to meet a lot of the folks there, which I
Yeah.
love, by the way, because they all come to New York. So I get to
Yeah.
see them. I just have to fight New York traffic as opposed to
Oh my
fight
God.
I am really seeing a couple of emerging areas of assessment. The first is, I think we need to segment countries by where they are socioeconomically to some extent,
Hmm.
because their views are often based on where they are in their journey.
Hmm.
So if you take some countries in less developed markets where they're really striving to help many of their citizens to get to subsistence or, working class levels, transitioning from agriculture to urbanization. And
Hmm.
so a lot of these countries are really focusing on the fundamentals of math, reading, keeping kids in school,
Yeah.
mainly K-12 type of needs. And
Hmm.
so their needs are really around measuring progress year over year. And so the
Mm.
tools that they use, like if they're on the PISA, which is the OECD's test for
Right.
over 90 countries around the world that test math, reading, and other skills, they're really focusing on seeing what they can do to boost PISA or other related metrics
Yeah.
on math and reading to see how those are boosting. So they
Mm.
have a lot of need for the what I'll call the tools before the assessment to help really strengthen interim updates. Is my sixth grade year for the country progressing? Is seventh grade
Mhm.
progressing? So that by the time they become 15-year-olds, they're actually seeing progress. So, what are the kind of things we need to do before we get to the eventual output? If you take then countries that are fast growing, you take a India, you take a
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
these are countries that, yes, they have some of those elements because they do have portions of their economy, but they already have a growing middle class.
Yeah.
Many of these are countries are really focusing on the K-12 to higher ed move because they're really trying to boost enrollments in higher ed or
Mm.
boost enrollments in technical vocational programs so
Right.
that they can really help do the transition from education to work. So
Mm.
those countries have a whole series of different assessment needs. They often need the fundamentals as well, but they're
Right.
also looking at this is where things like AI literacy, digital
Exactly.
literacy,
Yeah.
new industries. If it's a
Mm.
country that's focusing on green energy, they need to manage all of the skills, solar, panelists and,
Yeah.
all kinds of engineers that are water related and so forth. So
Mm.
they're really trying to get certifications
Mm.
and licensure regimes going.
Yeah.
And then you've got the developed countries, like the United States, right? Countries that are very fortunate to be at a developed stage and, robust, sizable incomes. These countries all have more aging populations. These countries are working with the challenge of demographic decline. The
Yeah.
countries are trying to figure out how to automate
Mm.
skills, more of an awareness of AI in many of these places as a key part of the business processes for the more mature companies that they have. And so
Right.
there, these skills start to become different, right? And so you
Mhm.
see more tech-enabled skills. You see a lot of job transitioning skills. You see people from one career going to another career and trying to figure out pathways and show certifications and licensure to signal, hey,
Yeah.
there's not a job for me in this area, but there is one here. I want to be certified to go do that thing. So I
Yeah.
would say, this is really broad because each country is
Sure.
different and they have different needs. But broadly speaking, I see different sets of needs as it relates to measurement in different countries. But the key thing I wanted to highlight here is leadership.
Mm.
That globally, you just like you meet leaders and you go, wow, this person gets it. This
Yeah.
person gets the importance of investing in human capital. This
Mm.
person gets the importance of measuring those investments. And this
Yeah.
person really cares about the ultimate success of their people to not just have good education, but to get good jobs.
Mm.
And those leaders that really are concerned about these things are really ready to do big things. And I think we're at a stage where there's so much disruption happening in the world. I mean, there's a lot of tension and lots of points that leaders that can see the future and extend beyond the latest news cycle or the latest current conflict or the latest crisis and be thinking 5, 10, 15 years, there are some of the most inspiring people I've ever met. And so, I mean, really kudos to these ministers of education that are on the front line and presidents
Mm.
of universities and school districts doing that. I think that regardless of which type of stage that their country is in, leadership matters a ton to
Mm.
get people focused on how measurement can help them get the outcomes that they want for their people.
Mm. Fascinating. It makes me immediately wonder about how we could assess that from an early age, like the vision skills and the ability to kind of, it's also with AI taking on some of the so-called lower order thinking. How do we identify the more visionary, future thinking leadership capabilities? And again, getting back to my 6-year-old,
Yeah.
do so at an early age. It's been an amazing conversation here with Amit Sevak, the CEO of ETS. As we're wrapping up here, looking further out, what captures your imagination? What keeps you up at night? What's got you going?
I'm inspired by science
Mm,
of measurement. It's a less known sector, even within the education industry,
mm,
but the scientists that are really focusing on how do you measure things better
yeah.
are really at the front lines of using AI, using new methodologies, integrating what we know from psychology, from data science,
Hmm.
from neuroscience, and really helping us better measure potential, like your 6-year-old, right? Helping really measure that.
Yeah.
And I think to me, the way an Apple Watch or a Fitbit can measure your heart rate
Right.
or your steps. I mean, we have to want better measurement from ourselves and from our educational institutions for our children. And so for me, I'm really excited by what the science is doing. I mean, ETS research, we've got 200 people that are really focusing
Yeah.
on this. And we're just part of an ecosystem, a global ecosystem of folks that care about it. But I think the more money we put into research, the more time we understand the scientific reports, that excites me because I think that that type of research is what not only distinguishes organizations like ETS, but also will help the field for decades. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the research front. I'm
Hmm.
really hopeful that despite all the noise that we see of all of the concerns with educational progress or lack thereof, like the latest NAEP results,
Sure.
and ETS powers the NAEP results. And so,
Yep.
we're very attuned to the challenges in math and reading in the country and, the post-COVID declines we've seen. I really believe that there's more attention that's now being paid to it. And so there's a crisis in education in the US and many parts of the world, but there's also this awareness now because of these good measures like NAEP, where we can say, oh, there are things that are working in this state or in that state, in this city, in that city, and we can actually share and learn. So I think the communities of practice, both in the US and the continued interconnections with other countries, is super important. And I'm really proud of what we're doing at ETS to try to foster those kinds of convenings and
Mm,
dinners and events because that's super exciting to keep pushing the boundary of not just doing measurement but actually applying the learnings from those measurements to really power progress. I'm excited about ETS. I am, the last 3 years we've gone through a major transformation, new leadership team, new products, new services. Last year we launched 8 products. This year we're going to launch another 8. We have acquired companies. We're launching into new countries. So I think the last 3 years has been really foundation building. But
mm.
now we're really poised, I think, for some really exciting new areas of growth, new areas of service, new areas of research. And so I'm really excited with what's ahead.
Fantastic stuff. Maybe just as we wrap up here, any parting advice, any suggestions? You're someone who's wound up in a kind of amazing position here, vantage point where you're sort of have a unique perspective on the future of assessment, the future of education. Any advice for folks who care about the future of education and want to chart their career in this space?
Measure your AI readiness relentlessly.
Mm,
I really think we're at the beginning of what is similar to the Industrial Revolution
mm,
150 years ago, or
hmm.
perhaps in some ways even similar to even more fundamental shifts, like from agrarian to industrial,
Right.
even pre that, because what we're talking about right now is so fundamental. I mean, the way that these investments in AI are shaping the way that we as humans are interacting with each other, interacting with systems and processes. So this is a moment right now where the opportunity exists to be not just, using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Anthropic or any of the tools out there and getting benefit, but really going to the balcony, being self-aware that, hey, maybe I'm okay on this skill, but maybe I need to pick up this, or do I
Yeah.
really understand how these work? And do I know how to go beyond just basic prompt engineering to actually really uploading data into systems and using machine learning, or do I know how to create bots? And not all of us are technical, and I'm not suggesting that we all need to be able to do really sophisticated high-end stuff like engineers at OpenAI or Grok or whatever. But I do think that everyone has an opportunity to push themselves in this area
Hmm.
because just like we learned math and reading all those years ago as such foundational skills, this is becoming at that level or nearly at that level of importance. It's not to say math and reading isn't important, but I think for everybody, 6-year-olds, 50-plus-year-olds, all of us,
Yeah.
there's a moment right now where we just want to be self-aware and try to create our own scorecards until we at ETS are able to evangelize our scorecard out there and others. So yeah, measure your AI readiness relentlessly.
Love it. Reminds me of folks are talking a lot about, executive function, metacognition, a lot of these, kind of unique human abilities to kind of step outside of yourself, get that broader perspective, and then ideally funnel that energy back into your own growth and development. Amazing stuff. Amit Sevak, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me.
And for our listeners, if you like what you heard, please write us reviews, rate the show, do all the good things. We'll be back again soon. This is Trending in Education.